Hello, dear friends. My name is Vasyl Pekhno. I'm a Ukrainian journalist, and right now I propose to all of you to watch this latest update on Ukrainian battle map situation as of July the 29th. So watch this video, like it, subscribe to our YouTube channel, leave your comments just below the video in the chat. So I will make no longer introduction. Let's start overviewing the map, but first of all, some political issues as well. I'll probably start with Donald Trump's statements. After all, the day before, the American president said that he was shortening the deadline he had given to Putin and the Russian Federation to show, so to speak, a gesture of goodwill or a willingness to engage in peace talks. Previously, Trump had said that it would be 50 days, that it would last until the 2nd of September. Yesterday, Trump stated that it would be 10 to 12 days. He said supposedly that he would give Putin 10 to 12 days to do something about Russia. Will anything actually happen in 10 to 12 days as a result of this statement by Trump about shortening the time for Russia? For now, I don't believe it. I'll be honest. I absolutely don't believe that anything could happen. Why don't I believe it? Because Putin has really become as brazen as possible. He feels excessively confident. So confident, friends, that he even allows himself to launch drones, decoy drones like the Gerbera type over the territory of NATO member countries. And this is in Poland, where something might accidentally fly in from Ukrainian territory. This was a Gerbera drone that flew from Belarus into Lithuania. This happened yesterday. It's not a strike drone, although now a small, a combat payload is already being installed on it. It's mainly a decoy drone, but its flight was recorded in the skies over Lithuania. Let's watch the video. Friends, is Vilnius, the capital of Lithuania. A Russian drone is flying right over it. In my opinion, this is a clear statement, a clear demonstration by the Russians of their strength, their desire to provoke, their wish to show that they are capable of more. And Russia is preparing for war with NATO. The question is whether our partners are preparing. The question is whether Trump is actually taking these serious actions, or whether he will ultimately work to defeat Putin together with all of us, with our Western civilization. This is a big question for Donald Trump. Yesterday, he made strong statements, but we'll see. Personally, as I said, I don't believe in them. Meanwhile, Russia, based on the latest actions taking place at the front, seems to have moved to the second phase of its summer offensive, which is just one of the phases of the overall offensive. The summer offensive is ongoing right now. The situation is very difficult for us in the Kupiansk territory. Currently, the second most intense area where the enemy is attacking is the Lyman front. Pokrovsk, of course, along with Kostiantynivka, is a difficult situation. It's consistently tough there. Siversk, where the enemy has recently started using its mechanized units, is also becoming part of this story. The Novopavlivka direction, where the enemy has practically already reached the borders of the Dnipropetrovsk region, and then there's also Zaporizhia. So we basically have these 7 points where the enemy is putting serious pressure on us. Kharkiv region is also approaching. Honestly, I'm already, to tell the truth, thankful to God that this approach isn't happening so quick, but I expect it will happen soon. I am almost certain that a Russian offensive will happen soon in the Kharkiv region as well. It's not out of the question that this could happen with the involvement of North Korean troops. But these are nothing more than my assumptions. That's why Putin has absolutely no intention of stopping. Moreover, I'll say it again, all the information coming from the front right now allows us to state, or rather to assume, that on the contrary, the second wave of the Russian offensive, a large-scale, massive offensive on the front as part of the summer campaign, has just begun. And this pressure can be overcome through the coordination of our defense, of our drone units, but to put it mildly, we're not doing so well with that. And where things are going well, we'll talk about that now. And this can be achieved by constantly trying to play a chess-like strategy, disorienting the enemy, carrying out local counteroffensives, responding from our own side. That's exactly how I see the actions being carried out by the 225th Assault Regiment. Outstanding people, an outstanding unit, which in fact through these very actions in the Sumy region is showing that you have to strike where the enemy thinks he has secured his position, where he does not expect it. And this would be precisely the key to slowing down the Russian summer offensive, which has begun its second wave. In addition, our long-range drones are now carrying out some very interesting operations on the territory of the Russian Federation. I don't know ultimately whether it was drones or saboteurs who operated on the territory of the Russian Federation, but at least yesterday, 2 fires were recorded at facilities related to the engineering units of the Russian Federation. Here is this video from Nizhny Novgorod's Kstovo, where the 210th Inter-Service Regional Training Center is located, which provides training for the engineering troops of the armed forces of the Russian Federation, specifically a training center for engineers. And there you can see, well, how intensely it was burning. The purpose of this center is to train and retrain military personnel in engineering specialties. Perhaps our soldiers know something, perhaps they are preparing for something, given that fires are being provoked at exactly such facilities. Well, I am convinced that this did not happen without our involvement, because at the same time as the fire in Kstovo, Nizhny Novgorod region, another fire was also recorded in the Rostov region, where the Borodinovsky training ground of the 11th of September Arrayed Guards Engineering Brigade of the Russian Federation is located, and it was burning there as well. These are very interesting simultaneous actions. Literally day after day, certain acts of sabotage are being carried out against the engineering troops. And to be honest, this really makes you think. That's why such interesting asymmetric tactics are being explored. Interesting asymmetric options like local counterattacks or strikes on engineering targets are being carried out against the enemy, who at the same time is actively infiltrating our ranks on the front line. In particular, the infiltration of such enemy groups continues in the Pokrovsk and Zaporizhia directions. Why do I use the word infiltration? What does this mean? The thing is, we can observe a certain chronology or let's say a trend in the development and evolution of Russian attacks, which initially took place as large mechanized assaults. This was 1.5 to 2 years ago. Then the Russians realized that these mechanized assaults were not yielding any results at all. They switched to attacks by small infantry groups, but with frequent assault. Now, when even small infantry groups have become large, meaning that 5 to 7 people on the front line is already considered a lot, the Russians have turned their attacks into something different. Just yesterday, I spoke with the spokesperson for the Southern Defense Forces, Colonel Voloshin, who explained that, for example, on the Zaporizhia axis, and by the way, the same thing is happening on the Lyman front. What are the Russians doing? They wrap themselves in these anti-drone cloaks. Why are they called anti-drone? Because they absorb the heat signature from a human body, which shows up and prevents drones from detecting this heat spot during reconnaissance. Thanks to these anti-drone cloaks, Russians, some of their trained groups, you could even say these are special forces to some extent. These trained groups sneak through tree lines, slip through certain positions, hiding from our drones and making their way, infiltrating, in fact, right into the ranks of our defense, which, to be honest, is currently quite thin. Accordingly, infiltration into these lines takes place, and this then leads to serious problems. After that, large groups of the enemy's classic assault infantry, their marching battalions, move in. That is, the enemy's tactics have now changed somewhat, and similar infiltration is taking place, including here in Pokrovsk. The same sabotage groups that entered here from the south, the Russians even tried to disguise themselves in civilian clothes in order to operate here. Earlier similar infiltration actions by the enemy were recorded to the southeast of Mirnorad in the Hrodivka area. And now, at present, we are actually observing the same kind of infiltration into Rodinsky and Novoekonomichne, and in the future, all of this will turn into infiltrations directly into the settlement of Mirnorad. That's why right now special attention is being paid, so to speak, to the resilience of our positions against any movement by the enemy, any at all. And in this context, I have said dozens, hundreds, maybe even thousands of times that drones are extremely important. But right now they are more important than ever, because it all depends on the capabilities and capacities of a brigade. First, A, to supply itself with drones, not just strike drones, but also reconnaissance ones. And second, B, to have a well-established system for managing these drones, electronic warfare systems, electronic intelligence systems, and other components that are now part of technological war. It is these capabilities that determine whether they will be able to hold their section of the front or not. For example, a brigade with, say, 150 or more, well, obviously their capabilities are incomparably lower compared to the 3rd Assault Brigade or the 59th Assault Brigade. So right now, the point is that we have an unevenness among the troops. Some are better, some are worse, and the worst ones aren't because they're bad guys, but for example, because they don't have the same media presence. But that's also a question for the unit itself, so to speak, when it doesn't have such a high media profile. Even though it shouldn't be this way in the Ukrainian army, objectively, that's how it is. We had hoped that the core system would help hold back these major enemy offensives and improve, or rather optimize, processes within the military. However, in reality, it has worked unevenly and is not delivering the best result. And more than once, when covering, for example, the situation in the Novopavlivka direction, which, let me remind you, is a vast area of responsibility stretching from Orikov to Pokrovsk, well, in the southern Pokrovsk direction, and ending with the Velika Novosilka sector, this whole area is the Novopavlivka region. Here, the 20th Army Corps has entered right in the very thick of it, so to speak, where the most intense action was happening. The front actually began to collapse very rapidly. And so far, as of now, it hasn't proven itself to be an effective unit capable of stopping the enemy's advance. And this isn't just a criticism of the 20th Army Corps. This is generally a question about the capabilities of many of our corps. This is a topic that skeptics used to raise cautiously, saying that, yes, of course, we need to do this, but the question is whether we will have the necessary resources for the Army Corps to be able to hold back the enemy. Not all resources and not all corps are actually the kind of resources, pardon the tautology, that are capable of holding the line. For example, the 3rd Army Corps of Biletskyi, which my colleague Yuri Butusov wrote about yesterday, although wait, stop. He's not just my colleague anymore. He's no longer a journalist. He's a serviceman now, Yuri Butusov. Accordingly, he wrote about the fact that there are now the first, more or less, preliminary results of the work of the 3rd Army Corps led by Colonel Biletskyi in the Kharkiv direction. As is known, this is the Borova area. It's right here.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
Let's take a look at where. Well, it's no secret, I think, that the 3rd Assault Brigade is also largely responsible for this section of the front. They've now been assigned responsibility for 60 kilometers. Just imagine one brigade is given 60 kilometers of the front. In total, the 3rd Army Corps under the command of Biletskyi is assigned 120 kilometers of the front. However, by the way, I personally still don't have precise information about which brigades are part of it. There are neighboring units here, the 66th, 63rd, and 60th Brigades. Are they part of the 3rd Army Corps? I honestly still don't know that yet, but that's not the point. The point is what Butusov writes about us says that on June 4th, the 3rd Army Corps actually took up defensive positions along the Oskil River, being assigned responsibility for 120 kilometers of front line. And from June 4th until today, July 29th, that's almost just a few days short, almost 2 months. In 2 months, the 3rd Army Corps in the Kharkiv region lost only 16 square kilometers of position. 16. At the same time, they gained 8 square kilometers of territory as a result of successful counterattack. So basically, that's our net result. It's like, a balance of minus 8 square kilometers. That's extremely little considering the current pace of the Russians' advance and the resources they're using, especially given that on this section where first the 3rd Assault Brigade and then the 3rd Army Corps entered, almost 200 square kilometers were lost over the past 6 months. And here in 2 months, it's just 8 square kilometers. Also, our average monthly losses have almost halved, even though the intensity of fighting here has increased expat Djibouti. What conclusions can be drawn from this? A unit where everyone is one of our own, a unit where history is cherished, where commanders rise through real combat merit, let's put it that way. Not because you have a star on your shoulder boards or because you're someone's godfather, brother-in-law, or managed to pull some strings for yourself. Where there is a career advancement system like in the 3rd Assault Brigade, there are successes. Where everyone is one of our own, where there is trust, where trust is based on leadership, on trust in the commander, there are successes. By the way, this doesn't apply only to the 3rd Assault Brigade. This also applies to Kartiev's brigade, to Azov as well, and in some cases to the 59th Assault Brigade. We have many other units that honestly can serve as examples and are looked up to. where there are competent, good commanders, like in all the drone line units, for example. So where all of this is present, everything works, but where it isn't, unfortunately, we have some very problematic sections of the front where the brigades responsible for those areas are falling short. And this is exactly that unevenness. So far, the Army Corps system still hasn't worked as a reform to achieve the same results that Andrei Biletskyi's Corps is already showing. Because it's not just a matter of leadership, by the way. I mentioned media presence. Media presence plays a huge role. After all, if you can't afford to buy a drone or provide ground robotic systems, you simply won't make it. The same 3rd Assault Brigade achieves its successes because, according to Butsov, 90% of their supplies come from volunteers or businesses that empathize with and support the 3rd Assault Brigade. But there is only one brigade, like the 3rd Assault Brigade. But we need to somehow spread all of these to a wider audience. Let me put it this way. I know that right now, in particular, the process of decentralizing procurement in the armed forces of Ukraine has been implemented. This is when each brigade, for example, receives 25 to 27 million hryvnias every month, and the brigade commander, the combrig, decides what to buy with that money. But objectively, this is a very good approach. However, for now, it is, well, somewhat insufficient. We need to give more opportunities to brigade commanders, corps commanders, but at the same time, their spending must be monitored to prevent, God forbid, any corruption, kickbacks, or similar things. Then efficiency can increase, but the state must mobilize more and more funds for this cause. All right, moving on from these administrative matters, actually regarding infiltration, as I mentioned, a lot now depends on the capabilities of drone reconnaissance. And by the way, it's worth noting that the Russians also, in some places, they are not entirely equal in their reconnaissance capabilities. It is known that near Pokrovsk, they have an elite group of so-called drone snipers, let's put it that way, called Rubicon. But not all Russian units operating here or in any other direction are, strictly speaking, Rubicons of that level of professionalism. They are also losing territory. They also allow our assault troops to infiltrate their positions. In particular, near Pokrovsk, the 425th Assault Regiment Skala released a video showing how they ambushed the occupiers. Having entered their rear, they eliminated the enemy, who was so brazenly relaxed that they weren't even holding their weapons. Unfortunately, I can't show this video here because YouTube will ban or censor it. But I'm happy to share this video of the elimination of a group of Russians who were ambushed by the fighters of Skala in the Pokrovsk direction on my Telegram channel. In the description of this video, you will find a link to it, to this video, and to my own Telegram community. And right in the morning, as soon as the map is released on there, you can go to my Telegram and watch this video from Skala as well. So I invite you to join. If you want, look for the direct link in the description under the video, or you can just type it in as you see on the screen @Pekhno_news. So infiltration is a serious thing, and it's really necessary to improve, so to speak, this orchestration of drone control. Orchestration, I've talked about it before, because now basically every unit needs to have its own kind of mini control center at dispatch point that lands its own drones, brings them down, shoots down enemy ones, works with technological tools, radar stations, electronic warfare equipment, turns on and off those channels that are advantageous for us and disadvantageous for the enemy. Well, that's just me putting it in simple terms. But in reality, it's really like an orchestra, and you have to conduct this orchestra. Unfortunately, not all of us are professional conductors. Unfortunately, and this unfortunately leads to the fact that, particularly in the direction of Mirnorad, we are facing problems that continue to spread here. In fact, right now, the enemy is once again infiltrating the Mineste Mirnoradska mine, the Krasnoimanska mine in Rodnenske. These are two very important sites. Plus, there are lakes here that allow us to hold our position. But if the enemy does manage to break through to this crucial defensive infrastructure, such as the mine sand, we can see that this trend and the possibility of the enemy doing so theoretically exists. Then soon we will be talking about the likelihood of the enemy entrenching themselves, building up forces, and directly launching an assault on Mirnorad. From there, the battles for Pokrovsk will begin. Pokrovsk, which the enemy is relentlessly destroying, striking it with every possible means of attack. This is the picture. A beautiful sun, probably a sunset over Pokrovsk. But just look at this landscape. The city is simply in ruins. The city is completely destroyed, and unfortunately, as of now, there is no sign that this situation will improve, because the fighting for Pokrovsk is very intense, and the enemy is trying to isolate and capture the city the enemy wants to destroy. The enemy is trying to break the backbone of our defense in this direction. And let's be honest, they do have certain prospects. On this note, I'll end here. Thank you for your attention, friends. Take care of yourself. All the best. Until we meet again, we'll talk again in the next updates and overviews of the battle map.